So I actually, maybe this is in line, I like poetry, and I know that's not like a super manly thing to admit, but I just go back to like David in the Bible. He like killed lions and bears and giants, and he wrote poetry. So you can do both, okay? You can do both. Now, I don't like the kitschy, cutesy, roses red, roses blue. I'm not talking about that. I like poetry that like makes you feel something. Poetry where the words are put together in such a way that they move you on the inside. You know what I'm saying? And I like it where a ton of meaning is packed into just a few words. There's something about it that just moves me. And what I want to do, I want to show you a poem. It's a super short poem, and I want to talk about it just a little bit. It's a poem by a guy named Langston Hughes called A Dream Deferred. Here's what it says. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? If you've ever had a dream that didn't get fulfilled, or a dream that feels like it's a long time coming, man, is that descriptive. All the different ways your soul could respond to a dream not coming true. Did it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does the dream become a shell of its former self and shrink? Is it festering like a sore? Not really healing, but actually getting infected? Or does it stink like rotten meat, getting bitter and nasty over it? Or are you crusting over sugary sweet? Are you pretending it doesn't hurt when it really does? Or maybe it's just sagging like a heavy load on your soul. Or is the pressure of an unfulfilled dream building inside of you and you feel like you're going to explode? Very descriptive. Also, very sad, right? That's kind of a sad thing. But I was reflecting on this poem specifically, and I had this realization that this could also be pretty descriptive of the way we respond when someone hurts us. When you're wounded by someone, when you're wronged by someone. This isn't just what happens when a dream is deferred. This is what happens when you get hurt by somebody. Think about it. When someone lies to you, steals from you, betrays you, gossips about you, abuses you, insults you, cuts you off on the highway, what happens to those things inside of you? Doesn't this poem kind of describe the different ways you could respond to that? How are you handling the wounds you've received lately? Or maybe lately isn't the best way to ask you. Maybe your wounds go back a long way. How are you handling those? Are they festering? Are you crusting over sugary sweet, pretending you're okay when you are not okay? Maybe it's sagging like a heavy load on the top of your soul, or are you a ticking time bomb waiting to explode? How are you handling these things? So this is our final week in our series called Blind Spots, where we're looking at things that are easy to spot in others but hard to see in ourselves, things that we have a hard time seeing in the mirror. And I saved a heavy one for last. The blind spot we're going to look at today is bitterness. And I think if you read that poem, you could read that this is the different ways that bitterness kind of expresses itself inside the soul. Definition of bitterness is the state of holding tightly to an emotional pain rooted in hurt that combines anger, resentment, and disappointment. And that's bitterness. You won't let go of the pain and the hurt and the anger. And I think that bitterness is hard to see in ourselves. Now, you might be sitting there going, totally have it, see it, I get that. Maybe you see it. But if you're a Christian, like in the Christian world, we're not supposed to be bitter, so we tend to not want to admit it, right? So I find different ways to get around this. My wife will point out to me sometimes, hey, you're still talking about that, it's been a while. And I will say, that's not bitterness, that is righteous anger from Jesus. Thank you very much. So how about that? I find a way to redefine it. Or if she notices that she's my mirror, by the way. She notices that she's in the 11 o'clock. I have to be careful. Usually you're in the 9 o'clock. Hi. What was I saying? You distracted me. You sit next to my wife. Yeah. Good choice. Sometimes she'll notice that I'm seeing everything in this like kind of dark, cynical way. And she's like, you're being a little bitter. I'm like, no, I just have street smarts from dealing with people long enough that I know that this is going to go poorly. Like, you know what I'm saying? I have a way of redefining what is bitterness as something else to kind of get around it. Or what I want to do is I want to justify it. I want to justify it. I want to say, no, I'm allowed to feel this way. Actually, not just allowed to, I'm supposed to feel this way. And that's like what my soul wants. My soul almost demands that if something is wrong and it's not going to be dealt with on the outside, I'm holding on to it on the inside. If nothing's going to happen out here, then I'm holding on to it. That's what my soul wants to do. So, and maybe you do too. Have you ever had something happen to you and then somebody says back to you, why don't you just let it go? You ever had that happen? And what do you, like immediately, you don't even have to think about it. No. And that no doesn't come from here, does it? That no comes from right here. There is something in your soul that says, I'm not letting that go. No way. So what do we do with it? What do we do with our pain? What do we do with these injustices, these wrongs? What do we do with this accumulated hurt that comes from living in a fallen and broken world with fallen and broken people? What do we do with it? So bitterness has been around as long as the human race has been around. I don't know if you know that, but if you go all the way back to the beginning, only 4 chapters into the human story, we have bitterness exploding into violence. Like almost immediately, the very first family was like super jacked up. Adam and Eve have kids and immediately things go sideways. You think your family's messed up? This one's worse. Have you ever heard of Cain and Abel? All right, so if you grew up in church and Sunday school, you've heard of this story, right? The ironic part about this story in Sunday school is like, we teach kids this story and like the lesson's usually like, hey, be nice to your siblings. But the story is about murder, right? So sorry, spoiled it for you if you hadn't heard it. So Cain and Abel are 2 brothers, very different. Abel is all about taking care of animals, and Cain is all about taking care of plants and stuff. So they're different, but they both bring these offerings to God. They bring an offering, and Abel brings some of his animals, and Cain brings some of his plants and stuff, and the fruit from that. And God accepts Abel's offering, but he rejects Cain's. And we don't know why. The Bible doesn't say why. We don't have to speculate. It doesn't really say. But what immediately happens is Cain becomes bitter over this. And he doesn't aim his bitterness at God like you might think. He aims it at his brother. He gets super bitter towards Abel. And what happens is, what happened in the poem. It festers, it stinks, it builds pressure, and then it explodes. And Cain commits the very first murder in the Bible. He kills his own brother. Now, it's a kind of a famous aftermath. God asks Cain where his brother is, and he says, am I my brother's keeper? If you've ever heard that statement before, it actually comes from Genesis chapter 4. And then God gives Cain some consequences for this act, and they're pretty severe, as they should be. But in this conversation, Cain goes from defensive to almost pleading, and he tells God, like, hey, God, like if somebody finds me after this, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me. To which, if I were God, I would have been like, yeah, maybe you should have thought about that. But luckily for you and everyone, I'm not God. And God responds very differently in his mercy. In Genesis 4:15, God says this, no, for I will give a 7-fold punishment to anyone who kills you. Then the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who might try to kill him. So Cain is recognizing that if somebody finds out, yeah, you killed your brother, that they're going to want to kill him, and this cycle of violence is going to continue. And God's like, no, I'm going to give you heavy consequences for this murder, and if anybody murders you, then I'm going to give them 7 times that. So God's trying to stop it. So that happens and the human race continues. And one of the things, I don't know if you know this about humans, is that humans just continue to hurt each other. Back and forth on the human race goes, and we hurt each other, and then we hurt in response to that hurt. And what it is, that thing in your soul that when someone says, just let it go, that says no, I think you actually have built into you this innate sense of justice, that the scales of justice need to be even. And I actually think this is from God. I think this is a good thing that we twist a little bit, that God actually gave you an innate sense of justice, that when something's wrong, we need to make it right. But what we do is when somebody wrongs us and the scales get tipped, we think, I better fix that. So we hurt them back. And if you've ever heard somebody say, I need to get even, that's what we mean, right? We're trying to tip the scales to be even, for this to be right. But here's the thing about humans. We're terrible at it. We're terrible at tipping the scales back even. We don't seem to have the ability to do it. So usually what happens is somebody hurts us and we hurt them back, and we hurt them a little too much. When he insults us, we insult him back, and back and forth we go. And hurt turns into more hurt, turns into more hurt, turns into more hurt. So you see it in the story of Cain and Abel. Cain is somehow hurt by Abel. We don't really know what Abel did, but Cain seems to think that he did something wrong. So Cain feels this, and then he's like, I'm going to make this right, and he kills him. And he tips the scales back. And what Cain's worried about, somebody's going to find me, and they're going to kill me, and these scales are just going to go back and forth. And God steps into that cycle and says, hold up, no, I don't want that. I don't want humans to continue to try and do this. So God gives Cain this punishment, and then promises a 7-fold punishment on anybody who would murder him. So the human race continues. Cain has children who have children who have children, and Cain's great-great-great-grandson is named Lamech. Now, you probably never read about Lamech's story in the Bible. It's like this big. He doesn't do hardly anything. He makes a little speech. And I want to read a couple of lines out of this little speech to you. Now, he's making this speech to his 2 wives. That's a different sermon. We'll talk about that another time. But here's what he says to them in Genesis 4:23. I have killed a man who attacked me, a young man who wounded me. 4 generations later, we're still doing this. So Lamech's like, somebody hurt me, I killed them. So the scales went this way, and I tipped it. And it's even a young man, so it's like somebody younger than him. He recognizes that there's something to that. It was young. And he kills him. Now, here we are in the story. I'm hoping that none of you are sitting here going, these are really relatable stories to me. You know what I'm saying? I'm hoping none of you are like, oh yeah, that was last week. Hopefully not. And hopefully you don't have even the desire for that. I just want to kind of get my brother. Or I hope you're not feeling that way. But what I do want you to feel is, hey, on a much smaller scale, don't we do this? Don't we have this built in, hey, something happened to me that was wrong and I want to make it right. Somebody insults us and we want to insult them back. Someone hurts us and we want to hurt them back. Someone ignores us and we want to get passive aggressive with them. Somebody wrongs us, we want to put them on blast on social media. Somebody cuts us off on the highway and we want to tell them they are number one, right? We live in a world of hurt in response. And you probably don't use the word revenge about the way you act, but label it or not, that's kind of what you want, right? This is wrong, I want to make it right. Shots fired, shots returned. They push, we punch. They offend, we attack. And it all comes from this sense of justice. And human history is this long, drawn-out story of us trying to tip the scales back and forth and hurting in response, hurting in response, and this cycle of vengeance that we have both on big scales when it comes to wars and awful things like that, but all the way down to playground, right? He took my ball, he pushed me, I hit him. It's everywhere when you look for it. We've been doing this in this world for a long time, from Cain to Lamech, all the way to us. Now, Lamech says one more thing. If you read it, now I might be reading into it, but it seems like he's proud of what he did, which is a weird thing. He's like, that guy hurt me, killed him. And it's like this, have you ever been or seen maybe a culture where it's like, you get hurt and you have to hurt in response? It's almost like a defense mechanism. You're like, nobody's gonna mess with me now. Nobody's gonna mess with me now. And he's proud of it, and he also knows who his great-great-great-granddaddy is. So he says this in verse 24. If someone who kills Cain is punished 7 times, then the one who kills me will be punished 77 times. So he quotes God in a weird and twisted way, which, by the way, you should watch out for that. That's not a great idea to do that. That God said that if somebody hurts Cain, he's going to have 7 times punishment for that. But Lamech's kind of puffing up his chest and he's saying, yeah, that was for Cain. It was 7 for me. It's 77. There's a multiplier on his revenge. There's a multiplier in his hurt. There's a multiplier in his offense. But something in Lamech's little speech here should pull a string in the back of your mind. This should sound familiar to you. Not 7 times, but 77 times. That should be familiar. If you grew up in church, you've been in church very much at all, you should be like, wait a minute, where have I heard not 7 times, but 77 times? This is actually one of the more famous things that Jesus said. Jesus has used this language. And maybe you've heard that, but you didn't know the origins of it or the depth behind Jesus' words. So I'll show it to you in Matthew chapter 18, verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and said, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? So our boy Pete's like, hey, I get hurt and I forgive, I get that. But like, what if they hurt me 7 times? Can I be done? Can we go with Lamech on this one? Like, can I get revenge then? Because 7 times is a lot. Like, he's thinking this is pretty good. 7 sounds like a good amount to say that somebody hurt me that many times and I'm going to forgive him. But Jesus responds. And again, this is fairly famous. If you grew up in church, you've heard this before. Verse 22. I tell you not 7 times, but 77 times. Again, you've heard this before, but maybe you didn't realize how deep it was. Jesus isn't just pulling numbers out of the air here. He's quoting Lamech. And as he always does, Jesus is twisting it and turning it on its head. He's reaching back to the origins of this revenge cycle, and he's flipping it. He wants to write a new human story here. He's referencing that story because Peter, a good Jewish boy, he would have known that story, and Jesus is immediately clicking into this revenge story, and Jesus is transforming it, redeeming it. He wants to write a new human story. Jesus is saying, instead of this human story of the multiplication of revenge and the multiplication of hurt, he wants to write a human story where there's a multiplication of forgiveness. And when you're hurt, instead of hurting in response, you forgive. Replace revenge with forgiveness. That's the story he wants to write. And I want to compare these 2 stories. So I want to give you an example. It's just a hypothetical. It's about a married couple, so forgive me if you're single. You're like, gosh, you always use married people as an example. Yeah, they're easy. For bad examples, it's rough sometimes. So let's say we got a married couple, and they're happily married. And then let's say that the husband does something stupid, but he didn't even know he did the stupid thing. Totally hypothetical. I know that never happens. And then the wife, in response to this hurt, so she's hurt by that, probably more hurt by the fact that he didn't know he did it than the fact that he did it, if that makes sense. So she, in response to the hurt, she goes cold on him. She pulls back a little bit. And that he notices. So he responds to that, because that hurts him, by saying some mean words to her. And she responds to his mean words by saying some mean words. And he responds to these mean words that they're flying back and forth, that he's going to just start working more and he's not going to be around as much. And she responds to that by withholding intimacy, because we're not doing that anymore. You're not going to pay attention to me. We're not doing that anymore. And he responds to that by getting on the internet and finding satisfaction somewhere else. And she responds, when she finds out about that, by confiding in a male coworker and having an emotional thing going on there. And he finds out about that, and he responds by exploding. She responds to his explosion by sleeping with the guy. And he responds, and she responds, and he responds, and she responds. And you see how they end up here? And this cycle of hurt and response, hurt and response, and hurt and response, it just happens and happens and happens. And Jesus is speaking to that story, and he's saying, no, there's a better story. Don't write that story. You do not want to write the story of hurt and response and hurt response and hurt response. It's devastating. You don't want that. Lamech was wrong. That's not the story. You don't want to multiply revenge in your life. You don't want to multiply hurt in your life. You want to multiply forgiveness. So wouldn't a better story, I want to compare that. That's how it could go the worst way. And some of you, by the way, some of you know that. You live that. And you would stand up here with me and say, yep, that was bad. That was hard. That was awful. Wouldn't a better story, even though it would hurt in the moment, wouldn't a better story to say that 30 years from now you're sitting on your porch swing and your grandkids are sitting there and they look at you and they say, how are you guys still married? And you're able to look at them and go, oh, let me tell you a story about forgiveness, because this was not easy, but we made it through because we chose the story of forgiveness. Wouldn't that be better? Wouldn't that be a better story than this one? Jesus is trying to get us to see that Lamech, his story is devastating and awful and painful, but choose the story of forgiveness instead. But here's the problem. If you choose this story of forgiveness, it kind of begs a question, especially if you've lived the other one. You have to ask the question, what are you going to do with the pain then? What do I do with this hurt? What do I do with this anger? Because if I'm not responding, again, if nothing's happening to fix this on the outside, my soul needs to do something with this. I'm hurt. I'm angry. It has to go somewhere. What am I supposed to do with it? Good question. Well, the answer is actually built into the correct definition of forgiveness. Because if you think forgiveness means just saying it was okay, you're not going to want to do that. And if that's what you're sitting here going, is pastor saying that thing that happened to me, that I'm supposed to say it was okay? You're going to sit here and go, oh, heck no. I'm not doing that, and I get that. But let me give you some better definitions of forgiveness. I'm going to give you a bunch. Forgiveness is not an act of ignoring an offense. It is entrusting the offense to God's wise and just judgment. When wronged, we don't seek revenge or justice ourselves. We hand over our anger to God. Lisa Turkhurst puts it this way: forgiveness is not about letting the other person off the hook. It's about taking them off your hook and placing them on God's hook. I like that. Charles Spurgeon said, when we forgive, it's not that we excuse sin. You're not excusing it. But we leave that to the judgment of God. Corrie ten Boom, who was a Holocaust survivor, said this: forgiveness is an act of the will, and the will can function regardless of the temperature of the heart. I had to give the hurt to God. So for the Christian, if you're a Christian, you're sitting there going, okay, what's forgiveness? Forgiveness is not saying that it's okay. You are not. That is not what it means to forgive. We have this rule in our house when our kids have to apologize to each other. You know, it's so great when you're making them apologize to each other. So sincere when we're saying, sorry. Yeah, right. Anyways, you know, right? I already prayed for you for that. When one apologizes to the other, we do not let them respond with, it's okay. That's like we're trying to train them out of that. That's not what it means to forgive as a Christian. We make them say, I forgive you instead, because that's a better way to say it. Forgiveness is not saying it was okay. Forgiveness is taking your hurt, your pain, your wrong to the throne room of God. And you are laying down your anger, you are laying down your pain, you are laying down this innate sense to make this right, and you're saying, you do it. That's my anger, that's my pain, you see this, all this was wrong. You see it more than anyone, God. You're appealing to the highest court, and you're saying, you fix it. I can't do it, because God, all I do is I mess it up. I hurt, and then they hurt, and then I hurt, and then they hurt, and we're just going back and forth in this cycle, and I'm done with it. I'm giving it to you. I can't tip the scales right, but God, I trust you to do it. That's what forgiveness is. Look at what Paul says in Romans chapter 12. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. Maybe this verse shouldn't be as comforting to me as it is, but I really like this. Because think about this. This is not just God up in heaven like doing his thing, and like you interrupt him and go, God, I got this hurt. And God's like, I guess I'll do something with that. No, this is like an active thing. God's like, no. You don't take revenge because that's mine. I do that. So God is sitting on the throne in heaven going, I'm the one who does this. I fix this. I do it perfect. Give it to me. He's asking for your pain. He's asking for your anger. He's asking for that sense that this is wrong and it needs to be made right. God's like, it is. Let me do it. Let me do it. That's what forgiveness is. You're just releasing it to God to let him right it. So that tension in your soul that this is wrong, the way it's resolved is you give it to God. You're like, God, it's wrong, make it right. God, it's wrong, I don't know what to do with my anger, here, take it. The tension is relieved by handing it to him. You're not bottling it up. You're not holding on to it. You're giving it to him. You're giving it to him. And when you do that, look at what happens, verse 20. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. So because, and the important word there is instead, it says, hey, if you do this, if you give your pain and your hurt and your anger and your right to make things right to God, it frees you up. Now you're free and you can love your enemies. You can do good to them. You can bless them because you are entrusting this job to God because you want to hold on to it. And if you hold on to it, you can't do it. 20 and 21 don't work without 19. If you try to feed your enemies and give them something to drink, you won't be able to do it if you're still holding on to this. You got to do 19 first before you can get to 20 and 21. And if you want to not let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good, you got to forgive first because you're going to want to conquer evil with evil. You're going to want to do this. And God's like, don't do it that way. It's not going to work. You're going to do it wrong. Now, I hope that some part of you is like drawn to this, that you look at the story that Jesus is writing about forgiveness and that like you want that. You don't want to live this life of hurt and response, and that you see that it's not just damaging to you, it's damaging to others, damaging to everybody around you. And you don't want that. You want your story to be one of forgiveness. But, as C.S. Lewis would say, everyone thinks forgiveness is a lovely idea until they have something to forgive. I think it's easy for us to sit here and talk about forgiveness. You could read a book about forgiveness. You could sit in a college class and talk about forgiveness. And when it's cold and it's distant, we're all like, yes, that is an excellent idea. We should definitely do that, right? But then somebody hurts you and you're like, all right, God, you sure? You sure? Forgiveness is way harder in reality. And maybe you're sitting here right now and you're like, no, I get it because maybe you're sitting there with a hurt, a pain. Maybe it goes back decades in your life and the root is very deep and you're still carrying that. Or maybe it was this morning. I know you guys don't do this, but some people have a really hard time getting to church without fighting, and cussing at each other and stuff like that. Not this church, it's other churches, but maybe you've got a hurt even from this morning or this weekend. So I want to give you some extra motivation to forgive, specifically if you're a Christian. So if you put your faith and trust in Jesus, I want you to look at Ephesians 4:31 and 32. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, I love this, replace it with, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. So we're told to get rid of some things, saying, hey, out of your life. Rage and anger, out. Harsh words and slander, out. Bitterness, out. And he's saying, replace that, take those things out, and instead put in kindness, tenderheartedness, forgiveness. Take those things in. And then still you're like, I don't want to. And then he gives you your big why, Christian, your big why. He says, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. That's your motivation. Your motivation for forgiving others is that God has forgiven you. And by the way, that's really important that you know this. Like, the definition of a Christian is one who's been forgiven. Did you know that? Like, so if you're sitting here like, I don't even know, maybe you're not a Christian yet and you're not sure what it is. I just want you to know, being a Christian is not being a good person. That's not what it means to be a Christian. It doesn't mean you come to church. Sorry, this isn't it. What it means to be a Christian is to be forgiven. A Christian is somebody who looks at their life and says, I've messed this up. And you look to God and you say, I need your forgiveness. And Jesus dies on the cross and he takes your sin on himself and you are forgiven. That is like the most important aspect of what it means to be a Christian is forgiven. It's your most important quality. And here's the thing, forgiven people, forgive people. Forgiven people, forgive people. You have to see this. So if you locked yourself in a room with your Bible and you just said, like, what does it say about forgiveness? One of the things you would notice, there's this pattern in the Bible when it talks about God forgiving us, it's almost always attached to like us forgiving others. There's this chain that seems to attach the two where you talk about God forgiving you and then you also talk about forgiving others. It's always in there. I mean, gosh, one of the most famous places if you ever read the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our debtors as we forgive those who trespass against us. Like God's always attaching forgiveness of us to forgiveness of others. And I don't even know how to talk about it because some of you are like, oh, are you saying that if I don't forgive others, I'm not forgiven by God? I don't want to say it like that. But I guess what I'm trying to communicate to you is I don't even think it's right to say that Christians are commanded to forgive because I don't think that's strong enough. What I want to say is that a Christian so understands that they're forgiven that it becomes a part of like their spiritual DNA. And you so know that God has forgiven you of everything you've ever done. And if you really reflect on that, you're like, I'm not that bad. Yeah, you are, right? You gotta think about all the stuff you've ever done, all the attitudes you've ever had, all the thoughts you've ever thought. That God took all that and he gave it to Jesus on the cross and you're forgiven of everything. You stand before God clean. And then realize how absurd it is to stand before God clean, that he took every single thing you ever did, took it, and then to turn around and go, I don't forgive that person for that though. Like it's just absurd. In order for you to be consistent as a human being, that makes no sense. What it means to be a Christian is to allow forgiveness to become the lens through which you see the world. You are so steeped in God has forgiven me, not just past, but current. As I'm living, God is forgiving me, that I can't help but extend it to others. You realize perpetually how foolish and stupid it is for you to try and not forgive people. Because you know that when Jesus died on that cross, he didn't just die for your sins, he died for the sins of the world, right? Which means he also died for the sins that were committed against you. So when you try to not forgive somebody, you're basically like walking up to the cross and being like, hey, that sin right there, Jesus, I'm gonna take that one. Like, that's crazy. You don't want to walk over, that's holy ground. You don't go snatch things from Jesus. He took that onto himself on the cross. That's not yours anymore. Forgive people. It should be in your DNA, man. It's not just something we do. It's a part of our identity. And by the way, one of the things we talk about as Christians is that we follow Jesus, right? We follow Jesus. Well, I don't know if you know this, but Jesus experienced the worst injustice ever committed, in my opinion. Jesus dying on the cross was the worst injustice. God came to earth and we killed him. That is the most unbalanced the scales have ever been. And as they are nailing him to the cross, what does he say? Father, kill him. He could have. I mean, part of me thinks he should have. You ever watch any of those movies where it shows that stuff? Like, you want to be like, oh man, you want to tackle him, right? If Jesus said, Father, kill him, the skies would have opened up and it would have been over. I mean, it would have been over, right? We wouldn't even be here. The world would have been wiped clean. That would have been it. God's like, fine, I'll tip the scales. There, you're done. But he didn't. He said, Father, forgive them. And who is he talking about? Who's them? Certainly the guys who are nailing him to the cross. Also the guys over here who are gambling away his clothes. Certainly the people in the front row who are mocking him. Pilate who condemned him. The soldiers who drug him up here. The soldiers who beat him. He's certainly talking about them. But see, as Christians, we believe that them is way bigger than just the people present. When he says, Father, forgive them, he's talking about us too. That his forgiveness is on a cosmic level. That instead of saying, I'm going to tip the scales of justice right, he's actually saying, no, I'm going to take all of it onto me. Let the scales fall on me. I accept it. And it going all the way back to Lamech, instead of saying, sevenfold, get them, God, he says, I forgive them. I forgive them, and he stops it. And if Jesus can scream from the pain of the cross, Father, forgive them, we can too. We can too. And I know it's hard. I never want to minimize that. Some of you have dealt with some deep, dark stuff. And I can't even begin to understand it, for real. I've lived a Nerf life compared to some of you. Like, I get it. I get that you've got some deep, dark stuff. And I know this is hard. Even if you have all the right thoughts about it, emotionally, this is still a difficult thing. So I just want to share a little bit of mine, and I'm just sharing it so you can, like, see from my perspective. Have you heard people talk about church hurt before? You know, church hurt, the special thing. It's one of the only ones we label. We don't label, like, work hurt or kid hurt. You have kids, they hurt, dude. Teenagers are mean, right? We don't label any of that, but we label church hurt. For some reason, it has like a little label. And I think the reason we label church hurt is because we expect that this place would be different than other places. You know, you think you wouldn't get hurt here. It's supposed to be a safe place. And I get that. Unfortunately, you got a bunch of sinners gathering in one place. We hurt each other. And church people, can we be real? Church people can be the worst. Can be the worst. Most vindictive and slimy people around. Pastors can be the worst. Thank you for not saying amen. That was good. Thought you might. But I want to point out, and I point this out, I just want to, I don't want your pity. Please don't come up to me like, oh, I don't need that. But I want to point out that if church hurt is such a normal and real thing, isn't it safe to assume that if a pastor is steeped in church, that he would experience it more than most? That if you're ministering in a church, if you're volunteering in a church, if you're deep in a church, that you're going to get a lot of that. You'll get, thank you, you're going to get a lot of that. And here's what it is for me. So just so you know, like, I get to be a part of the people's best and worst moments of their life. Do you realize that? It's crazy. Like the range that I experience. I get to be there when you're getting married, and I get to be there when somebody close to you dies. I see you in the best. I get to celebrate with you, and I get to cry with you, and it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't, as a man, like I don't have the emotional range to even do that. It's a God thing. Like, I don't have it. And it's a wild thing. And my job is to like love people and be there and try to help point people to Jesus all the time. And I try to do that as best I know how. But what happens to me is crazy. I will do that with people. I will marry people. I will be there in their best and worst moments, and something will happen and they will just leave. They just leave. They don't say a word to me. And then you're sitting there going, all right, well, what did you do? I don't know. I don't know. They didn't say. Now I hear stuff, you know, some direction decision that I made, some leadership thing that I decided, something about the way I preach or my theology or something. And they're just gone. They didn't say anything. Nothing. What do I do with that? You know, like to be real, I want to scream about that. Like, that's not fair. I did all that. Like, didn't I do enough to make up for some little thing? Like, is this not worth anything to you? Like, that to me feels wrong. Like, no, come on. What, I chose to lead the church a little different than you would? Oh, I'm sorry. My own wife thinks I do the wrong thing sometimes. Thank you for staking it out. It's good. And it hurts, and it hurts, and it hurts. And like, I have, gosh, take this the right way, please. I have a list on my phone of people who have like left the church. Not like the Billy Madison list, stop it. And I want to clarify, not everybody who's left the church is on this list. It's the people who like, I feel the worst pain from. So it's not like I keep a list of everybody. If you have like moved to a different city, you're not on the list, okay? I'm not doing it that way. But if like, it really hurt me, I put them on the list. And the reason is not actually, I hope you hear it as a good thing. I keep that list because the Bible says to pray for your enemies. And if people hate me and be mad at me for stuff, like, I want to be able to do that. And what I do is I pull that list out every once in a while and I pray for the people on the list. And it's a gut check for me. It's all right, Lord, how am I doing actually forgiving these people? And it's good for me, because every once in a while I'll read a name and I'm like, oh, I still have a feeling. Lord, help me with that one, right? Like, it's good for me. And what I need you to hear, like, I have to be good at this. There's no scenario where I get to be a pastor and be like, I get insulated from being hurt by people. I don't get that. And you don't either, right? There's no scenario where you go through your life where you're not going to be hurt by people. You have to get good at it. You have to. And here's my motivation, by the way, besides all the stuff I've already said, that I follow a guy who forgave me of everything. I cannot hold on to this stuff. It would be embarrassing for me to walk into the throne room of God. Can you believe they left the church? God's like, dude, chill, forgive them. But besides that, I know that if I don't get that right, I'm gonna start treating you wrong. That something's that I'm gonna carry that. And this is where the blind spot comes in, and this is so important for you to realize. If you don't forgive well, it's gonna start to taint the way you treat other people, and you won't even know it. Because I'm tempted to just do this to you. I don't wanna let you get close to me because you're gonna hurt me. I've seen it 100 times. I have a list in my head. I know it. But God's like, no. If you are going to be who I'm calling you to be, if you're going to love people the way you're supposed to love them, you're going to have to forgive, and you're going to have to accept that, you know what? You're probably going to get hurt again, and you're going to have to forgive again. And you're going to have to kind of be okay with that, because that's what God's calling you to do. So my motivation is, I got hurt in the past, but I can't hold on to that because I want to love you well. And that's when I get a little bit more compassion for some of those pastors who kind of lose their minds. I'm like, maybe they just got hurt a lot, and they never really they needed counseling and they didn't get it, and now they're here. So I have a little bit of compassion for that. But you need to think about this in your life. You probably need a list. You don't need to necessarily write it out or put it on your phone. But part of the reason you might need a list is if something happens and you respond really big to it, a big emotion to something, like I know this in my story, like if somebody leaves the church now, it hurts me extra because it's not just them, it's the list. It just grew another. So I respond not with the emotion of one, I responded with the emotion of the whole list. Does that make sense? It's like magnified because of that. And if I don't know it, if I don't have it written out, like the reason I'm so mad about this is because it's not just them, it's all this. And I'm actually mad over here, I'm not mad at them, and I need to chill. Like you need that. Like if you don't realize that some of the ways you respond to people in your life is because somebody else hurt you, and you still haven't gotten over that, and now you're gonna make this new person pay for that and what they did with interest. Ooh. You gotta let that go. And it's going to affect your current relationships if you can't go back and forgive these ones. It's going to. So here's what I want to do. I want to take a minute. Why don't you close your eyes if you would with me. And I want you to have a moment with God. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine when you think about the person you need to forgive, there's probably somebody who pops into your mind, or maybe there's a couple of people who pop into your mind. And I want you to imagine like the hurt and the anger and that sense inside of you that says that's wrong. I want you to imagine like being able to pull that out of your heart and get it into your hands. They did this, they hurt me here. It's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. Get it into your hands. And I want you to imagine entering the throne room of God and walk up to him. And I need you, like the demeanor of God when you bring this into his presence is he is just as hurt and angry about it as you are. He's not sitting there aloof. He's not sitting there above this. He is in that with you. He hurts with you. He hates it with you. And I want you to imagine laying it at his feet. God, I give you this hurt. I give you my anger for this hurt, and I give you the right to exact vengeance, to make justice fit, Lord, to balance the scales. I give it to you. And give it to him. Tell your soul, this is the resolution. I'm giving it to God. You don't have to hold on to it anymore. I'm giving it to God. He will make it right. Give it to him. Lord, I pray for the person who they've got a deep wound, and forgiveness is so hard. Lord, I pray that they would feel your presence in that. I pray that they would know that you hate the thing that was done to them just as much as they do. I pray that they would see forgiveness is better. Giving it to you is better. I pray that they would trust you to take it. They would trust you to take it. That you're going to do the right thing with it. Lord, I pray for the person who maybe hasn't even accepted your forgiveness yet. Maybe they're sitting here and they hadn't decided on that yet. Lord, I pray that this would be the moment they would enter your throne room and they would bring their own life to you and say, Lord, I need your forgiveness for this. And that today would be the day where they're set free. They can walk out of here clean and pure because they give it to you. And Lord, I pray for this church that one of the markers of this church would be that we are forgiven people who forgive people, that we would not be grudge holders, we would not be bitter people, that we would be radical in our forgiveness of others, that it would not just be something we do, that it would be who we are, the lens through which we see the world. Forgiven people who forgive people. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.